Hello again. Here I am still in my sweatshirt and my and my lovely bedhead. Um, so I'm really moved to just throw out a couple of videos. So that's what I'm doing. This one is about breadcrumbs. I see a lot of people who I talk to about, finding your joy, uh, figuring out what it is that brings you joy, what you're meant to do, with your life or what's your purpose and that sort of thing. We talk a lot about that. And often people sort of push back with, I don't know. I don't know, what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know where I'm supposed to go. I don't know how I'm supposed to figure that out. So we're going to talk a little bit about how I figure it out and how I think you might be able to figure it out, right? Or start figuring it out if that's something that you're wondering about, which a lot of us are these days because we're in transition. Again, transitions can be amazing, right? And they are amazing if we allow them to be, because they also allow us to bring out a different version of ourselves. It may allow us to sort of crack open and figure out, like, okay, where I've been isn't where I want to be, or it may be where I wanted to be for a while, but now I want to move in a different direction. Now there's something else calling me. So I'm going to give you, again, an example from my own life. I have been talking about for quite some time and thinking about doing a podcast. And I knew the podcast was going to be about death, but I wasn't sure how, right, or what. And I wasn't sure. I was like, how am I even qualified to talk about death? I don't know. So I've been, trying to be open and curious. And I think that's the first thing that you want to do. You want to be open and curious. Be curious. Like, okay, I feel this pull to do this weird thing that may not, I'm a therapist. Why am I thinking about doing a podcast? I do these funny videos that, people may or may not watch. So being open, being curious. So I was, okay, I seem to be I'm feeling the call to do this. What does that mean? What does that look like? What am I supposed to talk about? Like every week, if I was doing it weekly, or even every month, who knows? So I have been over time doing what I call following the breadcrumbs. Okay. And my first mentor, Shomit Mitter, used to call it the treasure hunt. Okay. So you can think of it that way too. You can follow the breadcrumbs, you can follow the treasure hunt. I kind of like the treasure hunt. It's more of a gamey feel. So let's go with that one. So I'm on a treasure hunt and I don't know what the end result is. And that's an important thing. Not having an attachment to what you think at this moment may be the thing you're supposed to get to, right? When you're on a treasure hunt, you don't necessarily know what's at the end of that treasure hunt. You don't know what you're looking for. You go along and you find something, you find a little treasure and you open it and you're like, oh, okay. And then that treasure gives you a clue to where the next treasure may be hidden, right? So the important things here are to, one, be open and curious. Two, not have any attachment to where this is actually going, because you don't know, all right? It may be that you're feeling the pull to a particular thing because for whatever reason, that's the thing that's sort of going to make you curious, right? Or make you interested, or give you a little energy about doing something. Okay, so for instance, with the podcast, I have been thinking about this, talking about this, almost started it a couple of times, but it kind of didn't happen. And I thought, okay, the timing's not right. These aren't the people I'm supposed to be working with. And it's not that I don't love those people, but it just didn't happen. Okay, no problem. That might have been me not actually following the breadcrumbs or following the treasure. But it's continued to come up. So recently started talking to a friend of mine about doing this podcast together. That has gotten a little bit of motion. One of the things that came of that is that we started talking to people in the community. As I did that, someone suggested that I that I listen to a podcast that had been done a while back, about 10 years ago, and I didn't even know it existed. Well, I followed that little bit of treasure, right? Finally, it took me a while, it took me a couple of weeks, finally listened to the podcast. Well, the minute I pulled it up online, I saw the picture of the person who was doing the podcast. No one had told me a name. They had just said, it's a woman. She's great. You should listen to the podcast and see what she did. So I did. Well, it turns out she's a former neighbor of mine. She lived about a block away from me for 3 or 4 years. We knew each other, not particularly well, but we definitely knew each other. So I call her up and I say, let's have coffee. Following the treasure, right? So here I am. I go, look at this podcast. I realize I know the person, right? So I call her. We have coffee, but we can't have coffee. This is the holidays. We can't have coffee until January. Okay, that's fine. Timing, right? Gonna leave it in the hands of the universe. I go to coffee with her. Well, it turns out that my mentor from high school, who had always encouraged me to be a therapist and a counselor, and who was a therapist and a counselor himself, was about to, when I moved back to New Orleans, and again, this was also another series of treasures, right? When I moved back to New Orleans and I had let my license lapse and I had to go get my license all over again and figure out how to do that and get licensed in Louisiana when I had no license anywhere at that point, which meant I had to take all the tests all over again. But lovely Bill Rosenbaum, love you, miss you. Lovely Bill Rosenbaum said, as soon as you get your license, let me know, because I think the person that I'm sharing an office with may be moving somewhere else. Guess who that person was? The same woman who had been my neighbor, who had been doing a death podcast at one point. She quit doing it about 8 years ago. You should check it out, Death, the podcast. It's very good. So, wow, okay, that's a little bit of synchronicity, right? We're sitting there talking, and it turns out that she had been the person who had been sharing the office with Bill, who was leaving, and the timing worked out perfectly. I got my license, I think within about a month of the time that I got my license to practice again individually in a private practice, at the same time that she moved out. And so Bill and I then shared an office. I would not have been able to afford an office at that point. There's no way I could have taken that, or I would not have felt I could have taken that risk financially to rent an office, not having any idea if I was going to be able to have enough people in a private practice to support it when I was starting from scratch. Well, having the support of Bill and being able to sublet from him allowed me that opportunity to start a private practice. Again, I was following the treasure hunt. That's a different treasure hunt, but that treasure hunt has ended up like sort of intersecting with the treasure hunt that I have now, right? Now, from that meeting, she gave me a name of a person to get in contact with. Now, I've reached out to that person and I haven't heard back from them yet. And that's okay. Again, we're talking about timing. And if it turns out, as it may well, that I'm not meant to do a podcast, that's fine. It may be that maybe I was just meant to connect with this woman and maybe there's stuff we have to do together. Or maybe the podcast is still out in the future and it's going to be something else. But in the meantime, I have made connections with other people in the community that may end up coming to fruition in other ways. And that is the point, okay? And the point is also, I think, to have joy in the experience of doing it. How much fun was I having last weekend, 2 weekends ago? I think it was 2 weekends ago. It was only last weekend. Sitting there having coffee with this wonderful, wonderful woman who's done so much stuff and is so bright and brilliant and fun. And then figuring out that we have all these connections that we had no idea we had. That in itself was fun. So here I am having fun on the treasure hunt. And even if it never becomes anything else, I've had a good time just chasing down some of these leads. I have found joy in those moments, right? So I'm still figuring it out. I don't know if there's actually going to be a podcast or not. I don't know what's going to happen. But I'm excited because I'm having fun making these connections and sort of seeing what's happening, being curious. I'm like, is this guy going to get back to me? Are we going to have coffee? He seems like a really cool guy. I think it would be fun just to know him too. Maybe I'll run into him somewhere else. And then that connection will be made. I don't know. I'll keep you posted. But that's what I want to leave you with today. So if in this transition, your particular transition, you are wondering, what do I do, right? What do I do to find the thing I'm supposed to do, to find my purpose, to find the work that brings me joy, to find things that bring me joy, to pursue things that I have no idea whether or not they're going to come to fruition, to just play with it, right? What do I do? What do? You take the first step, right? You become open and curious, and you chase down the treasures, right? The little mini treasures along the way. And you have fun doing it, right? And you release your attachment to the outcome, to what you think, right? Who knows? Maybe I'll end up making a movie instead of a podcast, Maybe I'll do nothing. Maybe it'll just be, maybe I'm just having fun faffing around with this. I don't know. But that's the point. Be open and curious. Chase down your leads, right? Release your attachment to the outcome. Understand that where you think you're going may not be where you end up, and that's okay. And have fun doing it. That's what I have for you today. Mwah! Or whatever. Anyway, bye.